Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and it's great to be with you today. We're going to dive into more hot topics around chiropractic, and we're moving through our Module 2 series. So again, thank you for being on our call today, on our webinar, and I hope that you have your sleeves rolled up and your pen ready to take some good notes. Let's dive in and talk about this next step of the series, which I'm kind of holding back and giving you the title because it's one of my favorites. It's a word that's near and dear to all of us in chiropractic. But just to frame this, because as we're going through our topic, this module, this whole module, which is called New Patient, is really geared around you educating your new patients and giving them a whole new perspective in terms of how to look at their own healthcare, how to look at managing their own health and maintaining a high level of health so that they can enjoy the quality of life that we as chiropractors know so well because we incorporate chiropractic care into our own healthcare. So this is a big topic, which again, we want to dive right in. So let me actually just go right into sharing my screen real quick. I'm sorry, a little bit of housekeeping. Last week we had a recorded webinar and I was out of town, but I hope that you were able to join that and get that information. If there was any question or anything that you weren't clear on, please let me know. You can type that into the chat or you can send me an email. But please let me know if there was any areas that were unclear so that we can get those tidied up for you and you can continue to move forward as we progress through Module 2. So let me go ahead and just share my screen and there we go. And we'll get right into this. So the first thing I want to just point out is, as you can see, we're in week 2 now. So we're moving through the process of the New Patient series. Last week was the memorable welcome, and that was about making a great first impression with every new patient as they come into your office. You only get one chance to make a first impression. I know that's been said many times, but nowhere is that more true than for our new patients when they walk in your front door. So we want to make sure that they receive this memorable welcome, this wow, I came to the right place impression, and that sets the tone for them feeling like they came to the right place for their healthcare. So that was from last week. Today, we're going to talk about the next section, which is the Subluxation Education. Ta-da, there it is. That's, as I said, that's a word that's near and dear to all of us. I especially take that word very seriously because it is the term that we as chiropractors hold our uniqueness around, right? Yes, we're in healthcare. There's so many others that are. Yes, we're primary care doctors. There's also so many others that are as well. But specific to what we hold near and dear and what we can relate to our patients that nobody else can is the term subluxation and the concerns around that condition. So we want to make sure that we're very clear with how we're educating our patients about the subluxation. So let me just show you on this next slide, which just real quickly, I want to say our next module will start on May 11th. As that shows on the screen, that will not be a live seminar. That will be just basically a virtual transition from one module to the next. And then when we get into our July module 4, financial arrangements, that will be a live seminar. So that the upcoming next live seminar is going to be in July. Please mark your calendars for that. I want to see you in person, and we're going to get together for that seminar. But back to our topic today on the subluxation education. Just ask yourself, could your patients get an explanation about subluxations in a way that they really get it and understand the damage that can come without correcting their subluxations? And I want to just take a step back in time for a minute and use an example for this, because there was a time when cavities were not really considered to be something you could manage or that you could prevent. In fact, the paradigm in that time was that cavities were a normal part of aging, and dentistry was was not developed to the point where it is today, so that people, when they thought about cavities, they thought, well, if I get a toothache, I'll go see a dentist, and that they'll have to do whatever they do, which unfortunately the damage at that point is usually fairly advanced and the tooth gets pulled. And 100 years ago, that's what we went to a dentist for, right? Now, ideally, I know there's some exceptions, but for the most part, by and large, most people wouldn't dream of going to a dentist only when their teeth hurt, because the consequences of that mean you may not get to keep your teeth for very long, right? And our expectation now, based on what we know, is that if I take care of my teeth, I expect my teeth to last a lifetime. So the same is true with the spine. If we can educate our patients in a way that they really get it and they understand the subluxations, what they used to think of as a normal part of aging, or, oh, I just have arthritis and it runs in my family, there can be a paradigm shift to a new way of thinking, in that there's a prevention aspect here. And if I prioritize this approach, I can actually preserve my spine and maintain a healthy spine for my entire life. Wow, what a concept. So that's the direction that we want to go. And we want to make sure that we stay true to that through our messaging, through our education, through our flow through the office, through our sequences, all of it. We want to make sure that we stay true to that message, because think about that. Rather than patients coming in for pain relief and waiting until their spine hurts before they come in for an adjustment, we can have patients, if we do this correctly, where they're coming to us on a regular, ongoing, as we say in chiropractic, in DC trainings, lifetime care, 1 year at a time, for prevention, and not only for themselves, but for their families. And they're all coming in for that single purpose. So we want to make sure that we use our subluxation education opportunity to the fullest potential that we can to plant that seed. And then what we'll find, which is great, is that most people will adopt that for their own healthcare. So just make sure that you're really plugging this into your education process. I want to just frame this from the standpoint of your consultation room. Again, well, I don't want to be too redundant about that, but a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? When you walk into a room and you see things that can be educational in of themselves before a spoken word has happened, that's a very strong selling point for your practice and your patients. So we want to make sure that there's some specific things in your consultation room that you have laid out in a way that they can see those things, and it can start to build that understanding and build that education. And maybe not most importantly, but also importantly, it can build on that impression or that rapport or that respect, or big picture wise, the value that they have for your office just by the things that they see. So we have on here that put some diplomas up. We went to school for a long time to become a doctor. So put those diplomas up. And if you have more than one consultation room, make some copies and just make them, put them in a nice presentation. Some family photos that shows that you're plugged into the community. You're actually involved, engaged. Somebody else likes you, perhaps loves you, right? So you're likable, you're lovable, and you get along well with others. That's what the family photos show. Testimonials, right? Those testimonials that you have framed on your walls, and I taught you about that in module 6. Those testimonials share stories of other people. That gives credibility to the results that you're getting. So those stories are important. And I'll share an example with that in just a moment. Educational posters. We're going to have some information on the walls in our consultation room that shows our patients the inside of what's going on, or it gives them an insight as far as what's causing the health challenges that may have brought them into your practice. So we're going to show them through educational posters and perhaps a neuropathylator how the nervous system ties into these conditions that they may not realize are connected. Living plants. And this is just, it's nice to show life and vibrance and vitality in your practice. So having some living plants in the room is great. I personally like our X-ray room the best because in the corner there's a window, and right by that window we have a living plant. And these days it doesn't happen as much, but patients sometimes will ask, how important is an X-ray? I don't want to get any more X-rays. And it's fun to just kind of point to the plant in the corner and say, that plant's here every day getting X-rays all day long, and look how healthy it is. So having X-rays in a small amount to get a picture of your spine in this condition is not going to be that much that too, if I could say that, that won't be too detrimental to you. The plant seems to be doing fine, and we're going to use parameters to minimize your exposure as it is, right? So that's just another nice thing to show living plants. We have living plants throughout my whole office. I think it's just good to show life and vitality throughout the office. And I'll add another point too, which is interesting because I think these days, with construction and sheetrock and paint and lights and everything, there's a lot of toxicity in our lives, and there's specific types of plants that you can get that actually pull those toxins out of the air and recycle them into less harmful toxins in the air. So there's a great book I'll recommend. It's called How to Grow Fresh Air. How to Grow Fresh Air. And if you want to pick that up, I think it's a great book, and it gives you some perspective on having living plants in each one of the rooms of your office to keep the air clean and keep the quality of the air at a high level. And last, Kleenex. That's in the room because oftentimes when we have a patient who is sharing some of those real unfortunate circumstances around their condition, the symptoms they've had, the healing crisis, the effects it's having on them, somebody can certainly get emotional when describing that to you during a consultation. So it's nice to have some Kleenex handy just to show more empathy for them. So that's the overview. Now let me just show you what that looks like, because in our consultation room, as you can see, this is one of our consultation rooms. Just in going through those, we do have, and I don't know if this will be in the exact order, but we have educational posters. So here's a testimonial about a child who had ear infections. And certainly on a side note, if I have a new patient that comes in and they just so happen to have ear infections or allergies or swollen glands, something relating to that part of the body, I certainly want to put them in this consultation room. There's also a testimonial over here of a woman who was in a real dramatic car accident, and she had a neck brace on and she was taking a lot of medication. So if I have a PI case that comes in, guess which room I'm going to put them in? I'm going to put them in that one. Next door to this, we have a room that has other testimonials. There's a testimonial of a low back pain patient who used to have to use a cane. He wore a back brace too, but he used a cane for years, and that cane is framed on the wall. So for a patient who comes in with lower back pain, as long as there's not another new patient in there already, we're going to choose the other room for him to do his consultation. So this way, you're setting your room up to let the walls do part of the education for you. So there's the testimonials in there. As I mentioned, there's informational things here. Here's a neuropathylator. So you can push these buttons here and it'll light up specific parts of the body. If you have one of these, great. If you don't have one of these, I highly recommend getting one of them. Nowadays, they sell them on a computer screen, so you can actually do it through your computer, but it's a great way to connect the dots where if somebody has neck pain, for example, and they also have carpal tunnel syndrome, you can push the button on there and it'll light up from the neck to the wrist and shows that connection. So it's a great educational tool. If you don't have a neuropathylator, maybe you're starting out in practice and not able to afford one yet, which you'll get there in no time, trust me. You can also get the nerve posters from, I think it's from Parker University, or I think it's called Share Products. But they have posters that show the same type of nervous system pathways, and you can use that as well. We also have Kleenex over here. We have the vertebra showing the to demonstrate the subluxations. I mentioned the diplomas; those are up there. So make sure you have those in place. There's another one over here. So we have this laid out in a way that follows the same parameters that I described, and you'll want to set that up accordingly. Okay, so now we're gonna step back and we're gonna frame this from the moment that the new patient came in. Okay, they came in, they had the greeting at the front desk by your reception CA. Hi, John, it's great to meet you. Welcome, we've been expecting you. Thank you for being on time. Can I get a copy of your insurance card? And here we already have the copy of your information form. So thank you for filling that out online before you came in. Go ahead and have a seat and we'll be right with you. So the patient has a seat. Then, as it says on the screen, the initial greeting by your new patient CA begins. Now, if this is the same CA, that's okay. If it's not, then this will be a different CA that comes out and then starts this next process. So I like to call this the memorable greeting part 2. So there was part 1 at the front desk. Part 2 is starting from right now. So we're going to escort the patient to the consultation room now to get started. And actually, just to back up for a moment, I want to just let you know this. I think, oh, actually, I'm sorry. We're gonna come back to that because I have that in the scripts in just a minute. So we're going to explain the forms that we need to prepare their file. Now, what I want to just share with you on this is how you use your words can have a big bearing in terms of building trust and rapport with your new patients. So one way of saying that, getting the signatures for the forms might be, let's go ahead and have you sign these forms and complete your paperwork. Now that's not bad, but a nicer way to say it that again builds trust and rapport would be, if I can go ahead and we're just going to set up your file, and in doing so, I'll just need a couple of your signatures. That would be a better way to say it, right? It builds trust and rapport. Another way to say would be, we have your file almost complete, but I just need your autograph in a couple places to complete it all the way, right? So autograph, signature, good. Paperwork, fill out forms, not so good. So we want to be careful in terms of what words we're using as we're building trust and rapport with our new patients. So just remember to do that or to incorporate those as you're completing this step of the process. So we're going to explain and obtain signatures on certain forms that we need to set up their file. For example, we have the records release, we have the HIPAA policies, arbitration agreement, case types, and informed consent. And I'm going to show you these in just a minute, so I'll come back to this as we go. But these are the forms that you'll need to prepare the file and get it set up. Other types might be needed. You might need a child consent form or a personal injury case form or something relating to another case type. That's okay. Those can be incorporated as well. But we want to explain those and go through those details. Okay, so that'll be the first part when we go in the room. Let's go ahead and get your file completed, and I'll just need your autograph in a couple places. Let's go ahead and do that, and then work through that. Now, this is once those are completed, this is the next step, and the next step is to explain the subluxation information. And I'm putting this on the big screen right here, but each of you has this form, and you should have one of these for each one of your consultation rooms and just laminate them and keep it in the room. So you don't have to have a new one each time. You don't have to send the patient back or send them home with one. Just get these printed out in a real nice high quality paper and then laminate them and use one in each one of your consultation rooms. The point being here is to really help them understand subluxation and to pronounce it, right? Subluxation. Have them pronounce it. It's an unusual word. A lot of people have never seen it before, but we want them to understand it, because the more they can understand it, the more they'll take ownership around taking good care of their spine and avoiding subluxations. So we're going to go through that. We're going to have them say it, and they're going to say it out loud. Now, just as a framework in the consultation process, when a patient comes in for their first visit, they're going to say the word subluxation 3 times, and they're going to define it once. Okay, so just remember that in the framework. Now, I know that sounds like probably a little excessive, but again, because it's an unusual word and because many of our patients have never seen or heard that word before, in the process of their first appointment, which is going to be between 45 minutes and an hour, in that whole sequence, they're going to say the word 3 times, and they're going to pronounce it. I'm sorry, they're going to say the word 3 times, and they're going to define it once. Okay, and I'll show you how that works as we go through this. Okay, so once that happens, and we're going to come back to that, they're going to pronounce it, which I just said, and then we're going to use the subluxation information page, which you have laminated now, to frame what they're going to be learning about over the course of their first visit. So in providing this to them, it says under use the subluxation information script, and the first part says gray text box. That's on the front side. So we want to ask them to take a look at this form and then pay attention to the gray box, because when I come back, and this is from the CA now, when I come back in, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about it. Now, by framing it in that way, here's this form. I'm going to leave this with you. But just pay attention right here, because when I come back, I'm going to ask you about this. By framing it in that way, they're going to pay a little more attention when they're reading it, because they know you're going to be coming back in to ask them a couple questions. Okay, so that's important on the front side. On the back side, you have the chart of effects. And this is a really fun part of this form, and I'll show it to you in a minute. But the reason why it's fun is because oftentimes on the front side, they'll read it and they'll understand subluxation. But on the back, it has a list, and it's called the chart of effects because it lists where the nerves go in the body and what symptoms can arise when a subluxation occurs in that part of the spine. Now, if I'm a patient that comes in with low back pain, and then I read the chart of effects and I see that the nerves pinched in the neck can cause headaches, and I know somebody with headaches, but I didn't know that could be caused by a subluxation, you see the new level of understanding here? So we want to make sure that we share that in a way that they take a look at it and they start to understand the comprehensive functionality of the nervous system, and they start to relate that this subluxation could be causing other symptoms in other places in the body, right? So we want to make sure that we leave them with this information, and they're gonna review it. So that's so they're going to pronounce the word subluxation. They're going to use the subluxation information script, and then from there, you may want to offer them a beverage. That's just another really nice way of first class, first impression, is to say, I'm going to leave this with you. Pay attention to the gray box, and on the back, look at these other symptoms, see if anything relates to you or someone you know. And by the way, when I come back, would you like a bottled water? Would you like sparkling or a still water? And let them know that that's available. Okay, so just another nice first class touch. Then, as you're leaving the room, they're going to repeat the word subluxation. Okay, so as you can see on your screen, they pronounced it once right there. And then as you're leaving the room, let them know, I'm going to be back in a minute, but just in case, if the doctor asks, you're going to want to be able to understand this word. So what's the word again? Subluxation. Perfect. You got it. And then you leave the room. Okay, so we've pronounced it twice now. And remember, I told you in the whole sequence, they're going to pronounce it 3 times and they're going to define it once. Okay, so let's go to the next one. So now the CA leaves the room. And what did you leave them with? Now, remember, this is really important. What did you leave them with when you left the room? You left them with the subluxation information form. Okay, so you came in, you did the signing ceremony, which got you the signatures you need to complete the file. They already filled out their patient information form when that was done online. So hopefully that was done before they got to see you or even got to come to the office. And now you have that. So now you're just leaving them with the patient information form. They're going to review it, and you're going to step out for just a moment. And CAs, now you're going to make sure that the information you have is correct, because since they already filled out the patient information form, now you can look at that and say, okay, is there anything missing here? And let me just pause for a moment, just because I like to make sure the sequence is really clear for you. When the patient arrived at the office, and that was for the memorable welcome, which was in last week's webinar, they hopefully they already filled out their patient information form. So they were able to just sit in the lobby and relax for a moment, and then somebody came out and got them. If they didn't already fill out the patient information form, they did that in the lobby. They filled that out. Okay, that's important because we want them to be out in the lobby. They're filling out their paperwork. And again, that's not the nicest terms to use, but you get my point. They're filling out that patient information form while they're in the lobby. Why in the lobby? Why not in a private room? The reason why not in a private room is because we want them to see the activity in the office. We want to see families coming in. We want to have them to see children coming in and getting adjusted, people coming in and out and getting adjusted and leaving the office. Now, in some of the bigger practices, I know how it is when you're seeing a lot of people, you almost don't want to have a new patient sitting in the lobby seeing how many people are coming and going. I mean, in a span of 10 minutes, they might see 10 or 15 people come in and out of the office having received their adjustment. So if your office is so busy that you don't want to make a bad impression because of how busy it is, here's what you're going to do. Have your new patient sit in a designated seat. And what I mean by that is that you can choose a part of the office where the flow of patients is not so obvious, like your patients that are coming and going are walking right by your new patient who's sitting there trying to fill out their form, right? If that's going to be sort of a negative experience or feeling too busy or rushed, have a designated seat where your new patient can sit that's not in such a high traffic area. That way they're off to the side. Now, there's another advantage to this, which is why I wanted to pause here. And I see Dr. Knich's office on the phone with us today, or on the call with us. So welcome to you both, Celeste and Emily and team. And part of why I'm bringing this up is because it may be that when the reception CA at the front desk greets the new patient and does the memorable welcome part one, that they choose a specific seat to put them in. And that way, when the new patient CA comes out, they know exactly where to look for the new patients, right? And in my office, I have that. We have a seat off to the side, and we let the new patient know when they come in. It's great to see you, Mary. Thank you so much for being on time. We've been expecting you. Go ahead and have a seat right there next to the plant, and we'll be right with you in just a minute. So that way, when the new patient CA comes out, they know exactly where to look. Anybody that's sitting over there by that plant is most likely my new patient. And let's say you have two new patients there at the same time. There might be two seats next to the plant, and you can ask both of them to have a seat in that area. And that way they're not in the main flow of your established patients. So just wanted to share that with you. It's a nice little tip that can help. Oh, and let's see, there we go. And that way, you'll have better flow with that. Okay, so CA, you left the room, right? And you want to make sure that everything's completed on that patient information form. They may have filled it out in the lobby. They may have filled it out online before they came. Excuse me. Either way, you want to make sure it's completed. There's nothing left blank or missing. Once that's done, you're going to quickly set up your patient's profile in the computer. Okay. Now remember, meanwhile, your new patient is in the room reading the subluxation information form. So you've got a few minutes here, not a long time, less than 5 minutes, but not more than 5 minutes, I'll say. So you create their profile on the computer. That way you're typing in their name, their date of birth, whatever information you need to set up that profile on the computer so that it's ready to go. In my office, we use the Platinum system, and I love that program. It's great. So it's very fast, very efficient. The CA sets up that profile. Once that's set up, now they take a blank consultation details form, and they very quickly add the patient's information to that form. So things like the patient's name, once again, date of birth, case type, and their chief complaint, which is on that patient information form. Okay, so those are written on there very quickly just to set that paper up. Okay, so you want to have a bunch of these blank ones at your workstation for the new patient CA. Then you go back in the room. And if you offered a beverage, of course, you walk back in with the beverage. Here you go, Mary, here's your sparkling water. That entire absence is less than 5 minutes. So that's important because you want to give them enough time to read the subluxation information form and take a look at the back of it. Now, if they finish before you get back, that's okay. They can, check out the room. They can read the testimonial that's on the wall. They can just relax. But you want to make sure that that's not so long that they're wondering, well, what happened to the person that was helping me, right? So keep that entire absence less than 5 minutes, and that'll be the way to go. Okay, so from there, though, let's now we're going to jump over to the website because I want to show you how this translates into the big picture, and I want to give you some of the materials that you'll need to implement this at your office. And just as a quick reminder, because it's on the screen, the video that's on our weekly topic is the Subluxation Education demo, because this is a big part of this process in terms of having the getting into the chief complaint and starting the education process. So that video is in there, and you can check that out. Now, going through the forms, which I want to show you, because this is all part of what we call the signing ceremony. So the signing ceremony is the completion of preparing that new patient file. And I'm going to give you some samples of the different forms that I recommend that you can use. There may be other ones that you need, but this is a pretty good comprehensive list. We will get into some of the specifics for certain types of insurance, but we'll add those later. But the first one we have is the consent to provide care for a minor, right? If you're taking care of children, which I hope you are, then you'll want to have this form ready to go. So this is one that is important to have on file, and you can print all of these straight off the website, right, to immediately use them in your office. The next one is the arbitration agreement. And this one is an important, actually, let me hold off on going over that because I want to go through this in relatively straightforward order. So we'll do it this way. Okay, so here's the subluxation information form. So this was the one that you left the patient with. You showed it to them. They pronounced the word subluxation as you were showing it to them. You went through that, and then you left the room and asked them to pronounce the word one more time. So they've pronounced it twice. Now make sure you get this, because when we get into our next week and we go through the consultation, I'm sorry, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but when we get into week 5 and 6, when the doctor actually comes in, the doctor is going to be the third time that the patient repeats the word subluxation. So as I'm coming in as the doctor, I don't want to walk in and ask the patient, what was the condition that we're looking for, or what is the condition we're looking for, and have them not know it. I want to make sure that they know it and they're clear about it. So that's there for you on the website. And what you'll want to do is you'll want to print that form out and, as I said, laminate it and just have one of these in each one of your consultation rooms. On the back side of that form, so one side's the subluxation information. The back side, you'll go into module 6 and you'll print out the, it's called the chart of effects, and that has the symptoms I was talking about. So you take that form from module 6, this form from module 2, put them together and laminate that as a 2-sided page for all your new patient consultation rooms. So that's there for you. Now we're going to go into this one here. This is the subluxation information script. So this is how you start to build that education for your patient. So this provides detailed information about the most common condition we take care of and one of the most common causes of symptom, right? So whatever that symptom is that they came in with, whether it's headaches or low back pain, indigestion, heartburn, whatever it is, you plug that in right here. So this provides information about the most common condition we take care of and one of the most common causes of headaches. The condition is called a subluxation. Can you pronounce that for me? Now, one thing that that I want to just pause for a minute here and say is that as you're saying the word subluxation, watch your patient's face, because what you're going to see is that sometimes they'll just start to nod. Oh yeah. And what that tells you is here's somebody who's probably already heard it before. And I don't want you to come across in this part of the process condescending in any way or demeaning or belittling. I want you to come across as nurturing and educational. So watch your patient's face when you say this word subluxation. If they're like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, let me sidebar one more time, because it may be, and you'll know this from their patient information form, that they've already been to a chiropractor, right? If they have been going to a chiropractor for 10 years on a weekly basis, chances are they already know what a subluxation is. And so you want to be prepared for that. So when you go to this part of your script and you say, this is the name of the most common condition we take care of, it's called a subluxation, and they go, oh yeah, you can say, oh, okay, well, you've been to a chiropractor? Yes, I have. Oh, nice. Well, just for fun, why don't you go ahead and say, pronounce the word for me and just smile. And you might want to write that down, the whole just for fun part, because just for fun means I'm not trying to make you feel intimidated. I'm not trying to sound belittling. Let's just play a little game here for a second, right? So you want to be sensitive about that so that people don't feel like you're badgering them. Okay, so the patient, in this case though, patient says subluxation. This form contains valuable information. Please also pay attention to this gray box, which lists the different components to help us determine if you have a subluxation. On the back, you can review the list of common symptoms to, there's a typo there, not so, but to see if any apply to you. Okay, now down here, there are the footnotes. The number 1 footnote up here, this is how to provide excellent subluxation education to prepare the new patient for the rest of their visit. Number 2, we recommend printing the orientation talk chart of effects, which is module 6, week 5, on the back side of the subluxation information and laminating for repeated use. So that's what I was describing about using that form. So I'm going to step out to complete your file, right? I didn't say finish your paperwork. I didn't say I'm going to leave for a while. I'm just going to complete your file. And when I return, I'll ask you some questions about the condition, and the doctor will also discuss this with you when he comes in, right? So and number 3, by asking the patient to repeat subluxation, when the doctor comes in, the doctor is testing the patient, right? But they're also testing the CA, right? So what does that look like? What that looks like is, and then we're going to get into this a little bit later in week 5 when the doctor comes in, or sorry, week 6 when the doctor comes in. And that is that when I come in as the doctor and I say, can you pronounce the name of the condition we take care of? And they say, oh yeah, it's a subluxation. That tells me one of two things, or both things actually. It tells me either the patient was already very familiar with that word, which is great. They already know what it is. And what it's also telling me is how well of a job did my CA do in educating this patient about subluxations and pronouncing the word if the patient didn't have experience before they came to see us today. So I'm testing two things when I come in as the doctor and I start my part of the process. Okay. So just remember that detail because that's important. And I'll just finish that by saying if for some reason the patient kind of fumbles through the word subluxation, I, as the doctor, I'm not worried about whether they have experience about it anymore. What I'm worried about is how well of a job is my CA doing in terms of their part of the education process, which means that if I come in and a new patient doesn't know how to pronounce the word subluxation after having been asked to do it twice before, then I need to have a meeting with my CA so we can refine that part of the process, and my CA knows how important it is to do that with that portion with the patient. Okay, so don't gloss over that if the patient doesn't get it right. All right, so next one is the records release, right? This allows you to release records from your office. And so let me also just frame this one because oftentimes, and CAs at the front desk, you'll know this, we'll just get a phone call from somebody, hey, can you send my records to this other doctor? Well, if you already have this signed and on file, the patient doesn't have to come back in and sign a release. They can request it. Secondly, let's say the patient says, oh, I just got an MRI and it was done at this facility down, in the other part of town. Would you mind if I requested a copy of that for you? So this is from you doctors as their chiropractor. Can I get a copy of that MRI so I can review it with you and incorporate it into our findings here, which could, relate to how we take care of you? Oh, that'd be great, doctor, if you could do that. Well, rather than having to send them to that facility to get copies of the records or copies of the MRI, you can actually just say, would you mind if I use your records request on file to request those records? Oh yeah, that would be great. So where am I going with all that? On this form, what we ask the patient to do, and you'll see this in the video, is to just simply sign it. Don't date it. So it sort of lives in the patient's records as something you'll use as needed. So they sign it, but they don't date it. Okay. And if they're not wanting to do that, that's fine. You can just say, no problem. It's not a required form, but it does help when patients come up with those requests. Okay, and then case types, this is important. We want to explain to the patient which case type they are. And this one, I want to stress this one. So you should put a star or an asterisk next to this one in your patient files, because it's very important to prevent misunderstandings down the road and have your patient understand exactly what their case type is. And I'll show you a couple of examples here. Let me actually expand this a little bit, because let's say the patient has general health insurance, right? Now, let's say that you're out of network, which means that the insurance company is going to send the checks to the patient directly. And if you're set up in a way in your office to where you're required or you're depending on those insurance payments and the patient gets it and spends the money without telling you, you're going to come up short on your accounting, right? So, or on your patient payments. So in here, this is an updated form that we've changed, and I want to read this paragraph to you. It says, you may provide your insurance information for a complimentary verification of benefits, which we will review with you. You may be required to pay for your care while we obtain your benefits. Now, I have taught you that when new patients come in on their first visit, they should provide some kind of a payment. If they have insurance, they might be telling you, I only want to do my copay. It's within your right with this form to say, we're going to have you do a deposit in case your insurance doesn't cover the visit. This deposit will go towards the payment of that visit, right? Because it's very difficult after the patient has come and left, if their insurance didn't pay and maybe the patient didn't continue care with you, to have to track them down and collect that payment can be very difficult. We will bill your insurance directly if you have coverage. That's also important because, and if your office isn't set up for that, if you do super bills or something, that's fine, but they need to understand that because the charges are generated in our office, and we're going to be submitting the bills directly to their insurance. Let's see. And then it goes on to say, if we are an out-of-network provider, payments will be delivered to your mailing address, and it's your responsibility to deliver those payments to us within 10 days of receiving them. There's another part to this. Most insurance companies will not cover maintenance care, and therefore we can offer other arrangements if your condition requires further care beyond the insurance limits. So this is also important from the standpoint that there's actually most insurances have limits. We want to make sure that that's really clear right up front, so that if there's going to be an out-of-pocket portion that the patient needs to pay for, they understand those parameters already. Okay, so anyways, if you have questions about that, let me know, but we updated that to reflect the different types of insurances. There's also private pay in cash, which is case number 2. Case 3 is industrial work-related injuries. Case 4 is auto accidents. And we want to be clear on that one if you do personal injury, because sometimes that in the event that the payment for our services are delivered to the patient, they are required to bring the payment to us. Now, why is that important? How many of us have had PI cases where the attorney that was representing the patient sent the check directly to the patient, not to us? Maybe there was no lien on file or something. So we want to make sure that the patient understands that it's their responsibility to pay us for the services, even if they're being represented by an attorney in a case where maybe it wasn't even the patient's fault. So we want to be real clear about that. And then last one here, government-funded insurance, i.e. Medi-Cal or Central Coast Alliance. I've talked with you in other webinars about Medi-Cal or Medicaid. And this is also an important addition, because if you do take care of patients with that insurance, you want to make sure that that they understand that maintenance care is not covered and the patient is responsible for the payment. So there's the different case types. It allows you to very quickly just summarize with them which case type they fall into, and to clarify what steps to take with the various types of insurance. Now, to back up to the top, right here we have our very clearly delineated what our fees are in the office. So the patient is actually going to sign this form. They acknowledge and know what our normal fees are in the office. And that's actually, at least in California, I know some of you aren't in California, but legally in Santa Cruz, you must disclose what your fees are. And that's a great way to do that. So the patient signs at the bottom, they qualify and understand for whichever case it is, and they put a date, and we're all set. All right. HIPAA policies, that's pretty standard, but of course it's a required form. So we have to make sure that the patient signs it and understands about the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And it describes for the patient how information about them will be used and disclosed. Okay. So that's on there. And then the last one, as I said, I was going to save this for last. This is the arbitration agreement. And in this form, this basically is 2 forms. In one, it's the arbitration agreement, and on the back, it's the informed consent. So the patient must sign and date both of these if you use these forms, but I want to share with you why we have them, because when a patient comes in to see us, if there was ever a dispute between, I'll just use myself as an example, myself and the patient, what this form states is that we would try to resolve the dispute in a less costly way first, and that's done through arbitration. So we would meet with an arbitrator, and the arbitrator would hear out both sides, and then they would make a determination which side was the correct one. This avoids either side running out and getting attorneys and hiring, high charge attorneys and quickly running up a big bill when something like this can hopefully be resolved peacefully and in short time. So what the arbitration agreement says is that in the event of a dispute, we would look to an arbitrator to resolve it. If the arbitrator resolves it in the patient's favor, meaning doctors, you get the short straw, you lose, the patient wins. Okay, great. If the arbiter resolves the case in my favor as the doctor, then the patient can go get an attorney and seek that route. So it's just a nice buffer to keep costs low if there is ever a dispute. But in most cases, it doesn't ever get that far. In my case, I've actually been in practice for 27 years. I've never used this form even once. I've never had to, because we've been able to resolve them peacefully. There has been some disputes, but nothing too significant. Okay, so anyway, so that's the last form on there, and that brings us to the end of our topic for this week. Check out that video, though, on the subluxation education. That's a good one as well. Oh, actually, and you know what I'm doing? I didn't share my screen, so I apologize for that last part. So when I share the screen here, you can see that check out that video, and then that was the last of the series for the forms. Okay, with that, though, I would like to just check in and see if you have any questions, or raise your hand if you have a question. I'm happy to open up your line. And I don't see any hands up, and we went almost up to the hour. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off and say, have a great week. I know we're getting close to Easter, so we're gearing up for Easter. But as always, thank you for being part of DC Trainings. I appreciate our time together, and I will talk to you next week.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.